And even though I don't love this movie as so many of you do, I mean, I don't hate it, but I don't love it as many of you as you do, that doesn't mean we still can't have a really interesting, in-depth conversation about it. I've got a lot of observations, spoiler observations, that I can't wait to share with you. And also some questions that I want to ask you now that we can really talk about the movie, since you've seen it or are going full spoiler anyway. If you're at all into the comic book space, you should see it. It's clearly going to be an important film, not just creatively, but from a business perspective within the MCU. Movie Math on Sunday. Be sure to subscribe so you know exactly when it goes up. Hit that notification bell, baby. And why not the like button? Okay. So in the spirit of most people's positivity towards this movie, I want to start our spoiler discussion with my favorite scene in the film, which I suspect is many people's favorite scene in the film. Although I would be interested down below to hear what your favorite scene or scenes are in this new movie. But I'm talking about the cosmic portion of the film, from the Silver Surfer to the first meeting with Galactus to the chase that ensues. By far and away, I think the best shot in the movie, the one where I actually thought to myself, wow, was where as they try to escape, Sue is having contractions, about to give birth, she's in Reed's arms, and the Silver Surfer who's given chase not only catches up to them, but phases through the back of the ship and then reaches out and actually reaches into Sue's belly. Yeah, I gotta tell you, there's no privacy at all in that belly. Sue was making it go see-through. The Silver Surfer was just reaching in there. You know, I'm not a doctor, you don't say, or a child psychiatrist, but I do wonder what effect it would have if you could say peekaboo to your unborn child before they were born. I mean, this movie did a lot of things like, isn't that cool? And I just, you know, it's just the way I consume entertainment. But I always think of questions like that. I'm like, what about the psychological implications? And they were like, whatever, I wanted to see what it looked like. So yes, the Silver Surfer actually reaches in to Sue's womb. And the look of horror on Reed and Sue's face, and that perspective of just how close the Silver Surfer gets, is an incredible bit of filmmaking. I mean, wow. Wowie, wow, wow. I loved that. I give that sequence all its flowers. And when Sue then orders her brother to kill the Silver Surfer, saying, you know, because Johnny's like, I kind of like her. And she's like, she's trying to take your nephew. And Johnny goes, okay, I'll kill her. I was like, ooh, this movie's got some edge. And as many of you know, for someone, I do love like Disney parks and all that kind of stuff and Pollyanna, but I do like me some edge. So I was like, ooh, I like where you're going with this movie. And that brings up an interesting point. Based on some of the comments that you guys have left on my non-spoiler review, it would seem that back in the day, when Kirby was in charge of the Fantastic Four, they were a loving and healthy family and team. Ha! Boring. But more recently in the comics, the ones that I've read, I don't read all the Fantastic Four comics to be fair, but the ones that have interested me, and I've told you what I like, they're cold isolationist scientists who put their family first and foremost. And I see shades of that in this movie for sure. But the weird, loving, healthy stuff, I'm like, yeah, that's great in real life, but get it out of my fictional entertainment. All right. So anyway, I don't like the infantilization of humanity here, letting the Fantastic Four completely take over through the Future Foundation. We don't need any governments of the world. The Future Foundation will decide everything, and they just have complete control over Earth. I mean, call me Lex Luthor, I guess, but I have a real problem with that. And Superman, we're going to talk about the similarities with Superman, as you can see from the chapter times there. But, Superman really had that discussion about who's in charge when somebody has superpowers. And, the government there even says, I'm glad you're okay. They said to Rick Flag Sr. saying, I'm glad you don't have a problem with metahumans because they just became fully in charge. But, nobody was happy about it. And certainly not Lex Luthor. And, the whole Earth was just like, okay, you drive Fantastic Four. And a lot of times I thought the Fantastic Four were driving them off a cliff. And we're going to talk about that. I do wish, like with the Marvel movie Civil War, they had taken the time to really explore the moral quandary. A moral quandary that it didn't actually divide the fandom. Most of you sided with Cap, even though Bucky killed Tony's parents. I couldn't believe that. I was as shocked as Tony that you weren't on his side. He was like, how does this trump card of what Bucky did not win the argument? And you were like, Bucky's so hot and he's so cute with Steve. I don't want to hear it, Tony. All right, so I guess the Fantastic Four are also very cute. But anyway, I wish there had been some discussion of like, are you really going to sacrifice the entire planet Earth and over 8 billion people for this baby? Who, by the way, it doesn't even seem that Galactus wants to kill? We're going to talk about that. But first, I want to ask you one question that I've seen a couple of other ones of you ask. Why did Reed admit that Galactus wanted Franklin? You couldn't have pried that information out of me. I would have been like, Galactus, he can't be bargained with. I don't want to talk about it. Let's go fix this problem. Right? I mean, Sue's the transparent one. I'm not telling you what happened up there. Or I'd say he wants everyone's firstborn child. How would you like it? You wouldn't, right? So we're not going all Rumpelstiltskin on this. But, some of you pointed out and said, hey, Reed might be on the spectrum, like, say, Sheldon Cooper, which I think would actually really fill in a lot of the blanks that I have, questions I have about the character choices that were made here. And, interestingly, I like the idea of someone on the spectrum being the hero of a story. I liked that The Last of Us seemed like they were going to do that until they just ruined season 2. But that was a road I was hopeful to go down with that show. Also, of course, featuring Pedro Pascal. Well, not anymore, but I wish this movie had explored that. I wish Sue had been like, you know how you are, Reed, or like, you know what you're dealing with, like just something. I would have liked to have acknowledged it a little bit more. And then again, moments like that would have made more sense where they were like, what Galactus say? And, again, apparently the Future Foundation, the Fantastic Four feels they're above a publicist. Not after this movie. They should hire one. All right, so back to that chase sequence. See, so no matter how hard they try, the Fantastic Four, they just can't outrace the Silver Surfer. She's gone full crush. She's in that wormhole, right? She's riding the wave. She's surfing across the cosmos, looking fierce and amazing. She looks so great. So thanks to Ben's excellent flying skills and Sue's ability to turn the ship invisible, one of you wrote that, why couldn't Reed just build a cloaking device? I mean, Sue's in the middle of trying to have a baby here, man. She's got to do the work of a cloaking device, but they do a fake out that gets the Silver Surfer caught in a black hole that will take a month for her to break free from. I can see the writing, the script work there. They're like, we need a break to regroup the characters, so let's stick her in a black hole for a month. The visuals on this entire sequence, though, are just absolutely fantastic. Oh, I loved them. And I saw some people say that they didn't think that Silver Surfer looked as good as the T-1000, which I find ironic because as I watched the character in this movie, I said, I haven't seen anyone look this good as a silvery being since the T-1000. And you might say, oh, well, that was like 1990s visual effects. Shouldn't it have progressed more? I mean, I don't know, the reflection that you could see in her face sometimes, I just thought it was great. But I think that it wasn't a VFX question. It was this just mesmerizing, unstoppable force. The T-1000 just kept coming. And I felt that they captured that same, again, threat with the Silver Surfer. I really thought it was good. I think it's a compliment to say I think she's on par with what Jimmy C did in T2. If your movie can be compared to T2, and I think favorably, you're in a good place. So Galactus also looks amazing. I love the stars in his costume. He's sparkling like he's in a nighttime Disney parade. And also the way his eyes light up. Oh, it was great. Unlike other MCU attempts, I felt that they really finally got a celestial being right. Like beforehand, I was like, these are stupid. I mean, they're too grand of an idea. Like they work on the comic book page, but not in live action. Here I was like, oh, that is a cosmic entity. He is made out of the stuff of the cosmos. It's not just Kurt Russell with a mischievous smile. I really liked it. I just thought it was great. And then I even enjoyed round 2 with Galactus. Although, I I'm sorry, multiple screenwriters, but it made no sense to me that Galactus went to retrieve Franklin himself. Doesn't he have an assistant for that? I mean, he does. Silver Surfer. I mean, maybe she was off pouting after Johnny was like, is this really who you want to be? Her whole background, that backstory, I know they filmed it late and tacked it on. They should have left it on the cutting room floor. And also it bothers me when all aliens are humanoid. I'm like, what are the odds? And they're like, look, how are she and Johnny going to hook up potentially if she doesn't look kind of human? I'm like, I don't know. I've seen other shows. By the way, Invincible, which is inspiring everything right now. James Gunn certainly borrowed heavily from it. They dealt with that. But anyway. So I was like, why is he going himself? He should send Silver Surfer to go retrieve that baby or use his ship's tractor beam, which pulled in the FF's ship earlier in the movie. I mean, it was an obvious trap, but I guess he didn't take it seriously. I loved when he realized that there was a decoy baby carrier, right? And he saw that the real Franklin was over in the Baxter building. He said, clever bugs. It was not only a great line, but it was delivered so well by Ralph Ineson. Ralph Ineson has under 10 minutes of screen time or something, and he just a handful of lines. But wow, did he do a good job? You know, when they first cast him, and you guys were all excited, some of you, and they were like, he's going to be part practical, part VFX. I was like, oh, that's so stupid. But man, give this guy all his flowers that he deserves. Like, he just had such great moments. Like when he got to Earth and he looked back at the Statue of Liberty with kind of like a condescending smirk. It was just a look. And I not only loved the moment, but it made me chuckle. I was like, who hasn't felt that way sometimes? I mean, it was great. It was great. Really, I think that Ralph Ineson and Julia Garner, they do the best work in the movie. I actually like their work the most. So let's talk about Reed's plan. The Fantastic Four refused to give Galactus Franklin, who Galactus says has the powers needed to take Galactus's place, to free Galactus from the curse that is his celestial hunger. By the way, I think they were like, when the Fantastic Four went to negotiate with Galactus, they said, what does Galactus need? Or want? What does he want? And the Silver Surfer says, I think he needs. And I was like, he hungers. How do you miss the line? It's right there. His whole thing. He actually, I think I heard like in some earlier edits, like you actually saw him eating, like through the, I think it was cool that this was revealed to him be him eating a planet, but you actually saw through his feeding tubes, which for some reason are in his back, digesting a planet through that way, which was cool. But here he actually never ate a planet. I'm like, I haven't seen you eat anything, Galactus. He's like, I eat in private. Thank you very much. Leave me alone. So in the comics, Franklin actually does end up freeing Galactus from his hunger, but by rehabilitating him. And Galactus and Franklin have interacted many different times in many different multiverses in the comics. And sometimes Galactus is even Franklin's mentor. So, maybe the Fantastic Four and Galactus should have talked this out a bit more. It might even have been beneficial for someone with Franklin's powers to have a relationship with someone like Galactus. I'd be like, think of it like daycare, right? Celestial daycare. But they don't talk about it. Oh, so like how many of the world's problems would be solved if we just talked about it, right? And Reed says that don't worry, he just learned how to teleport in an egg. So he's going to teleport an entire planet to a different part of space, and he'll take Galactus millions of years to find it. I'm like, he's not that slow. I think he'll find it a little bit faster, especially if it's got Franklin on it, and he feels Franklin is his salvation. But yeah, I'm like teleporting an egg across a room is very different than teleporting a planet across a galaxy. What about the effects of the sun and the moon on the Earth in terms of gravitational pull and rotation? How can you assume that you can recreate that in another solar system? I mean, it seems so overly simplistic that it took me out of it a bit. And I couldn't believe that nobody else on Earth, this is what I'm talking about just blindly handing over control to the Fantastic Four. I'm not even an astronomer or a scientist. In fact, those were not great subjects for me in school. And this occurred to me. So no human scientists or astronomers were like, Reed, I'm sorry to second guess you, Lord Mr. Fantastic, but I don't think we can do that. Like, it never came up. It just really bothered me. I also thought it was unrealistic that Sue's one speech won over the general public, right? And they were willing to sacrifice themselves for her baby. I mean, she said, it was a good line when she said, I'm not going to sacrifice my baby for all of you. And they were like, okay, keep talking. We'll hold off on throwing the produce at you. but I'm not going to sacrifice you for my baby. And I'm like, how can you be sure? I mean, again, it didn't even seem that Galactus wanted to harm the baby, right? I mean, I'm like, I don't have enough specifics about what Galactus plans to do with the baby. Why don't you go with, they never asked if one of them could go with Franklin to be with Galactus. I don't feel they really made an effort to negotiate. All right, but speaking of Franklin, his dance card's getting pretty full because, of course, there's the big post-credit scene. So I'm going to make a whole other video about what is potentially happening next after this movie in the MCU. But I do want to touch on this here. So 4 years later, Franklin's a little bit bigger, and Doom pays a visit to him, although we just see this for a split second, and you just see Doom's cloak and his mask. Really, it's just like, oh, what? And then you're out, right? But in that 1 second, they established that Latveria, well, they also showed the empty Latverian seat at the Future Foundation, which is basically the United Nations. But if Doom and Latveria are a part of this universe, like they're not from it, maybe, I don't know, maybe Doom jumped over from another universe. We'll see. But the seat of Latveria seems to say that he is a part of this universe. So how is he not a part of this story? How did Doom and Latveria exist in this world? And how is Doom supposed to be a former colleague of the Fantastic Four? Certainly of Reed's, and he's not anywhere in this story. Would Doom really allow Reed to teleport the entire planet, which includes Latveria, without his consent? I think not. And if this was really going down, I think Doom would want to talk to Galactus himself. So it's just weird to me that he just comes out of nowhere. He must be from a different universe. It's the only way to explain it. Also, speaking of, because, they jump into this story, they skip over an origin story. But I have questions, not just about Doom and Latveria, but about Subterranea. So when they lay a trap for Galactus to lead him to one of the remaining teleporters that the Silver Surfer hasn't destroyed, this one's in the middle of Times Square. And for Galactus to get there, he'd have to go through the city. So to protect the civilians, they decide to evacuate the city underground. I'm like, why don't you just have them go to New Jersey? But they're like, no, we're going to go underground to the realm of the Mole Man. And I was really surprised when they got down there that there were roads that already led to Subterranea with signage. I was like, when did this happen? And instead of the usual humanoid moloids that are down there, it was more people. I was like, did a bunch of people just go decide to live underground? Right? And have a contentious relationship with the surface world? I mean, that's kind of like Earth Atlantis, but humanity in the comics isn't supposed to know about Atlantis really until, it's too late. But I mean, like, how did this happen? I don't understand how everybody was okay with it. I'd be like, I'm sorry. You can't live under the crust of the earth and be a threat to everybody above it. You just can't. It was crazy to me. I don't think the FF are doing a very good job ruling the world. Then in addition to evacuating a major city for a sci-fi threat, there are even more similarities to the new Superman movie. So yes, beyond even their brighter, hopeful, simpler tones, like back to comic book basics, both movies skip over their origin stories and plunge the audience into a story and a world that's already moving ahead at top speed. And they both have strong sci-fi elements, including black holes. Both movies feature a black hole. I mean, wow. And I don't know who was talking to who, but maybe Kevin Feige and James Gunn shouldn't talk that much, but that's nuts. And again, as I just said, they both have major cities evacuated for cosmic events. So that was crazy. I think this movie is more similar to Superman than it is The Incredibles. So yes, The Incredibles, of course, are based on the Fantastic Four. But at least for now, this movie comes across different to me. First of all, Franklin is just a baby, and Valeria is not born yet. So you don't have that kid, that child-parent dynamic, or the kids versus parents dynamic. The kids going off together and having an adventure. You don't have that element. And then also, this is where I think is the true difference between The Incredibles and the Fantastic Four. And I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. But The Incredibles focuses on how this superhero family deep down is ordinary, like every other family. Whereas the Fantastic Four is about a superhero family that is extraordinary, that is not like every other family, and revels in that. As I said, this Fantastic Four, like it often does in the comics, to me feels isolationist. They don't have any human non-superpowered friends. I mean, Sarah Niles has a couple of scenes, but she's not actually Sue's friend. She works for Sue. And, they don't ever hang out outside of work, thank you very much. Sue might tell herself that they're friends, but they're not. And then Johnny, for instance, is more interested in space than he is Earth. I mean, in the comics, he dates Earth girls. But here he brushes off Sue's attempts in that flashback to get him a date. She's like, my brother's single. And instead of him being like, I sure am, he was like, what are you doing to me, Sue? And I thought that was a surprising choice. And who does he have an interest in? An alien. Ben tries to connect to his old neighborhood, but he can't. One of you said that you felt the Fantastic Four was the MCU's version of Star Trek. And I think that's an excellent comparison. I think that is some people are saying it should be like, they really want to lean into the 1960s, futuristic, old school futurism. But I mean, and that is a nice element. But I like this idea of them being the most at home at space, that they went into space and it changed them. And now they're people of two worlds, maybe even a little more comfortable in space. I mean, Marvel Cosmic is a thing, MCU Cosmic. And I think the Fantastic Four fit in there quite well. I think Star Trek, again, excellent comparison. I do think this movie also lacks action, particularly with the lack of use of Reed and Sue's powers. That, to me, was a big mistake. I always tell you that story about Steven Soderbergh, about that, seeing that fan skipping from action sequence to action sequence. And, learn from that, right? I mean, that to me is very telling. And I think some of the best comic book movies have that element to them where you just want to go and relive that. I think it's a little bit like liking to look at certain panels of a comic as well, which is interesting. Because I don't feel the same way about other blockbusters. Although with T2, the sequences are really cool to watch. But for some reason with comic book movies, the sequences really do become their own thing. And I think X2 has that quality. I think that even the most recent, the Batman. I recently, just the other day, because I was thinking about the Batman because of the Superman movie and I want them to merge, I was going back and watching my favorite sequences from that film. This doesn't have that quality. I think there's only the Galactus Silver Surfer sequence in the middle of the film. But speaking of power usage, I was very impressed with the use of Johnny's powers. And I think it benefits his character that none of the Incredibles have fire powers. The Incredibles has been so inventive with the use of elastic powers or invisible powers, force field powers, that it's hard for this live action movie to be able to compete. But here, because we haven't seen any fire, I mean, we have Frozone, but ice and fire are very different. Johnny's action sequences feel fresh and new. I liked them. Despite Ben Grimm being on the team, it felt to me like when it came to action, Johnny did all the heavy lifting. Ben carried him back to the ship once Johnny's oxygen ran out and he couldn't flame on anymore. But that was the bulk of Ben's, and he did the cooking. I thought that was weird. I was like, aren't you the strongest member of this group? And he's like, they don't need it. I know some of you are eager to rewatch the movie, and I said I don't think it has that rewatchability factor to it, at least in terms of action sequences. Superman is an interesting movie to me because I think the Lois and Clark interview scene is as good as an action. I mean, that's Lois. Her action is talking. But I'm curious, if you do want to rewatch this movie, what sequences are you excited to revisit? Finally, I want to dive into our Fantastic Four in the order of my favorites. And I'm excited to hear your own rankings down below. Time to make some tough choices. Or maybe it's not so tough for you. For me, as many of you know at this point, my favorite member of the team easily is Johnny Storm. Even though Joseph Quinn often looks exactly like a young blonde Robert Downey Jr. It's going to be real weird when they have their scenes together. I wonder if the movie will even comment on it because it's so obvious. They did seem to do away with Johnny's Playboy image here. I don't think he was a Playboy. And they said they wanted to do away with that, but he wasn't a flirt at all. I mean, I think he genuinely was interested in the Silver Surfer. And in some ways, at some points, he almost seemed shy to me, even in his sunscreen ad. I think, he wasn't like, it was a cheeky moment, but not in more ways than one. It is nice that he's the one to decode the Silver Surfer's language. I don't know how he did it. I actually don't believe that he did it, but let him have his moment. Because it underlines that it's not just Reed, but also Sue and Johnny at the very least, who are also scientists, or at least somewhat smart. So much effort in the movie is put into establishing Reed and Sue's romance, but I liked the moment that they had between Johnny and Sue, brother and sister. You know, when everybody laughs at him when he's like, the Silver Surfer spoke to me, and they're like, sure, you're just falling all over her, you're in love, and everybody laughed him off. And I liked that Sue, even though she was making fun of him too, later on she went in to check on him and to really actually see what happened. You know, like she takes him a little more seriously because he's her brother. And I thought that was really nice. I wish there had been more moments like that. I think his powers look fantastic. He looks so good. I love that he absorbed fire. I love that he could expertly expel it with force and precision. I loved it. I also like that he took decisive action without having to be told to do so. I mean, Sue did say kill the Silver Surfer, but when Galactus was, they decided not to give over Franklin, Johnny just made a move all on his own. And it was effective, which I also thought was great. But as I said in my non-spoiler review, I would have liked to have known why Johnny was so interested in space. Like he was so eager to return to space. Why? And why twice was he willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for his family? He was eager to, I felt. He offered to go instead of Franklin's place with Galactus, probably to spend some time with the Silver Surfer, but I think they should have made that more clear. And then later on, he was willing to push Galactus through the portal and be stuck on the other side. Maybe also, now that I think of it, to be with the Silver Surfer. I really feel that this movie could have tacked on some more time. There's a lot of stuff they could have explored, and I think the movie would have been better off for it. And one of those things were Johnny and the Silver Surfer's romance. You know, by the way, Monica made that sacrifice, and I don't think she got nearly enough credit for it. All right, but it's not Johnny who ends up making the ultimate sacrifice. It's Sue. Sue Storm seems to really be existing in a sweet spot right now, and that she's appealing to not only the trad wife audience, but also the mother audience, and she's getting a lot of love. So, sorry, Wanda fans. I think this might be the end for us. But anyway, a superhero who is a wife and a mother, right? Really, really striking a chord with all audiences. But while, again, so much effort is put into, I think, successfully portraying Sue as a wife and partner to Reed, I don't think they made nearly enough of an effort to establish her bond with Franklin, particularly considering how important that bond is not only in this movie, but clearly will be going forward. Franklin seems to spend most of his time with Herbie, right? So when Sue dies, overextending her powers to push Galactus through the portal, making the ultimate sacrifice for her son, I got why the FF really felt that loss, the Fantastic Four. But to me, it seemed that Franklin would be too young to understand it and emotionally wouldn't feel it because he did not, or at least we didn't see him really spending a lot of time with Sue. I guess, of course, people will point out to that natural bond, that spiritual bond between mother and child, but I would have liked to have seen them put as much effort into that bond as they do with the Reed and Sue bond. Like, I felt that one, but I didn't feel Sue and Franklin's connection beyond that's her son, because it is. I also felt she could have used her powers much, much more. And one of my favorite moments was when she surprised Ben and Johnny in the room by revealing that they're like, when do you think they're going to be back? And she's like, we're already back. And they all jumped. I would have liked more of that. And she can't fly yet. Well, she doesn't fly. She moves around either on invisible discs or slides. But I hope she learns to do that soon. This isn't an origin story. I would have liked for her to have been much further along with her powers. I do think that she's a lot colder than Sue is usually shown to be, and certainly more aggressive. But as some of you reminded me, Vanessa Kirby has said that she's very interested in doing the evil Sue Storm storyline, Malice, who of course has won over a lot of fans in the Marvel Rivals video game. And she said that she was trying in this movie to plant the seeds for that version of Sue. And I see them when you remind me of that. As for Ben Grimm, Ebon Mossa Backrack is so charismatic. And I think that helps the character a lot. But the movie simply doesn't have the space for him. I thought Natasha Lyonne, as a teacher who still works and lives in his old Jewish neighborhood, which he's trying to reconnect with, that was great casting. I think I could feel a spark between them. And I felt that she could love Ben as he currently is. But on that note, Ben has had this horrible change to his physical form that I think has in some ways broke his connection to his own humanity. And you can see him at first trying to connect through his old neighborhood. I think that's why he keeps going back there. But also through his spiritual connection to his religion. And he does visit a synagogue. Where he sees Natasha Lyonne's character. And she even brings up for spirit, are you here for spiritual guidance? And he says, no, to see you. But I'm like, why can't it be both? I mean, again, the movie doesn't have the space to explore this, but I think they could have pushed it a bit more. I think they could have alluded a bit more to what Ben is going through. That's the problem with going to Franklin, skipping over an origin story and going right to Franklin. I don't think they're able to do enough with the Fantastic Four, and Ben got shortchanged the most. Even in the action sequences, again, hardly used, which I found really surprising. Then finally, Mr. Reed Richards. And most of us love Pedro Pascal. I love Pedro Pascal. I think he's really just so incredibly charismatic. And as I said in my trailer reactions to this movie, and I still feel this way, he's so charismatic and so much personality that it's weird to have him playing a character where he can't tap into that. I'm like, he kind of does. It's so strong, it still breaks through. And I have an interesting observation about that. But I think he's not utilizing, what he brings to the table in terms of his movie star persona alters the character of Reed Richards, which makes it not totally fit with the story. And let me explain. Now, it does seem, as some of you said, that maybe perhaps, Pedro Pascal made the choice to put Reed on the spectrum. And that's a great choice, as I said earlier in the spoiler review. And I wish they'd make that official. I think it would broaden the conversation. I think it would be really interesting to show someone on the spectrum who's still able to live this very rich and rewarding, extraordinary life, personally and professionally. As of right now, I think that, in addition to maybe that choice, Pedro Pascal has also chosen to play Reed a bit stilted. Like he's aware that he's in a period piece, whereas his co-stars, though, have chosen to play their roles more naturally. So that also kind of sets him apart a little bit. And again, if his character was on the spectrum, that might explain that choice better. Perhaps Reed is thinking too fast to speak, or dares not speak what he's thinking. There's that nice little speech he has about how it's his job to think of the horrible things so that he can keep them from happening. But the choice to make him most of the time hesitant is not very compelling, I think, on screen. A character that always stops himself from saying what he thinks or doing what he thinks he should do. That is, again, you're hampering the character. I think that's a problem. I do feel that in this version of the Fantastic Four, which to me is so weird because you have some people who are into the trad wife situation saying this film represents them. Here's what's interesting to me. Reed is the heart of this team. The MCU Fantastic Four, Reed is the heart. And he's a house husband who stays home. He works from home while his wife runs the Future Foundation. And she's the one who negotiates with the Mole Man. This is a very modern setup between the two of them. And it's not comics accurate. Now, I think I would be very into making that change. That would reflect a lot of the way a lot of households are run today. But here's where else it becomes a problem. It's a little bit like what George R.R. Martin said about even the smallest changes have a butterfly effect on the rest of the story. So Reed in the comics and in other mediums is locked in a lifelong battle with doom. A battle not just of intellect, but in many ways of ego, right? I mean, Reed is always loath to admit it, but that's a factor for him too. But I don't see Pedro Pascal's Reed allowing his life to get sidetracked like that. I think he would very quickly decide this is going to derail my life and I'm just simply not. He would tell Robert Downey Jr.'s Doom, and maybe he will in the upcoming movies, I'm just not willing to engage with you in this way. Have this fight by yourself, but I'm not going to be a part of it. But here's where it gets really interesting, because I can very much see Vanessa Kirby's Sue getting locked into a battle of ego with Dr. Doom. And who is in the post-credits scene with Doom and Franklin? Not Reed, but Sue. That to me would be very, very interesting. And I mean, again, I'm fine with opening this door as long as you walk through it. If you're going to make these changes, You have to actually make them. So it's very interesting to me. And so maybe this movie will make more sense once we see where we go. But as of right now, I don't feel in many ways that the film is comics accurate. But some of you do. So discuss down below. All right, so those are my spoiler thoughts on the MCU's Fantastic Four movie. I'm excited to hear your own thoughts down below. Share them and be sure to subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.